theyeshiva.net.
I'm going to give a brief historical introduction to the story that we're going to explore this morning in Gemara and Maseches Gittin. The year was 66 after the Common Era, or in the Hebrew calendar it would be 3000 Gimel Tov Chavav, which means 3,826 since creation, 3826 since creation. And the Jews of Judea, of Yehuda, rebelled against their brutal Roman masters. In response, the Roman Emperor Nero, or as he's known in our sources as Nero in Caesar, the Caesar Nero, dispatched an army under the leadership of General Vespasian, who's known by us as Aspasianus, to restore order and crush the Jewish revolt. By the year 68, resistance in the northern part of the province had been eradicated, so the Romans turned their full attention to the subjugation of Judea and Jerusalem. The same year, Emperor Nero disappeared. According to Roman history, he died by his own hand, he committed suicide. According to Jewish sources, he converted to Judaism. This created a power vacuum in Rome. In the resulting chaos, Vespasian, who was leading the revolt, was declared emperor, and he returned to the imperial city of Rome. His son, Titus or Titus, led the remaining army in the assault on Jerusalem. The Roman legion surrounded the city, and they began to slowly squeeze out the life of the Jewish stronghold. By the year 70, the attackers breached the walls of Jerusalem, and they began a systematic ransacking of the city. And the destruction culminated in the burning and the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash on the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av, on Tisha B'Av of that year 70, Gimel Alafim Taf Lamed, 3,830 since creation. The fighting was fierce, brutal, bloody, vicious, and horrible. In victory, the Romans slaughtered hundreds of thousands. Some put the number at 1 million or more. Hundreds of thousands of those who were spared from death were sold into slavery. Many of them were enslaved and sent to toil in the mines of Egypt. Others were sold as slaves all over the Roman Empire. The price of a Jew was cheaper than the price of a horse. Others were dispersed to arenas along the empire to be butchered for the amusement of the public. All the sacred vessels and relics of the Beis HaMikdash were taken to Rome, and they were displayed as a celebration of victory. The rebellion continued for a few years, and finally it was crushed in the year 73. 3 years later, with the fall of all the pockets of Jewish resistance, including Masada and other pockets of resistance, and thus came to an end that Jewish revolt against Rome, which lasted for all of these years, from 66 till 73, for 7 years. It was a very, very powerful resistance, and Rome crushed it with its full, ferocious might, which of course culminates in the events of the 3 weeks in Tisha B'Av of that year. Shivasa B'Tammuz, they breached the walls, and Tisha B'Av, they managed to destroy and burn the Beis HaMikdash. I should say others put the years a little different. Some say the Churban was 68, 69, or 70. When the Gemara wants to focus our attention to what provoked the horror, it shares one narrative. In Masechta Gittin, Daf Nun Hey and Daf Nun Vav, the Gemara famously declares, Kamsa and Bar Kamsa Charav Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim was destroyed because of the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, which is, of course, the Jewish way of expressing the truth, that even though there were many events that led to the destruction of Yerushalayim, the greatest event was the fact that Rome and the Jewish people were butting heads. Their oppression was impossible. The Jews themselves were fighting what the response should be. There were the zealots who felt that war against Rome is the path to go. There were most of the sages like Rabbi YY ben Zakkai who felt that was not the way to go. Compromise was needed under the circumstances based on the power of Rome. And as a result of so many factors and events, it led to this absolute disaster and horrible massacre, and what almost seemed to become the end of the Jewish people, and certainly the end of the Jewish commonwealth and Jewish sovereignty, and the end of Jerusalem and the Beis HaMikdash. But there are always the small events that seem insignificant and inconsequential, but they're not insignificant, and our sages often try to point out these what seem like insignificant events to explain how significant and valuable they are in the scheme of things. And so today we're going to explore one of these. Within the story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa itself, it's an event, a detail within what would seem a small story, but this is a small story within the small story that they turned into something quite grander and extraordinary. So if you look in your source sheets, this is the second half of the story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa in Gittin, Tractate Gittin 56 Ein and Vav Amud Aleph. The first half of the story is well known. There was a Jew who threw a party, a feast in Yerushalayim. He had a friend named Kamsa and a sworn enemy named Bar Kamsa. He sends his servant to invite his best friend to the party, Kamsa. Instead, the man invites his enemy to the party, Bar Kamsa. Why he did that? Room for speculation. The owner, the balabayas, the host, sees his grand enemy at the party and he asks him to leave. He publicly says, leave. The man doesn't want to leave. He offers to pay for his meal so that he will cover his own expenses. The man says, leave. He offers to pay for half the meal. The man refuses to accept the money. Leave my home. He offers to pay for the entire party out of his own pocket if he allows him to stay. Now, I know what I would do under such circumstances. If you were making a wedding, you threw $80,000 into the wedding, your sworn enemy comes and offers to pay for the whole wedding. I think it's a wonderful opportunity. Not only don't you have to pay, you also had your enemy lose $80,000. I don't know what's so bad about that opportunity. But this guy must have been very idealistic, so we must assume. So he refuses to take even a penny or ruble to let him stay. And instead, as the Gemara says, and here you see it, Nokte biyadei v'ukme v'afke. He grabs him with his hand, he stands him up, he brings him up, and he takes him out. He literally schleps him out of the party. Omar, this man, Bar Kamsa, says, Hoyil v'havi yasvi rabbanon v'lei michube. The rabbis were sitting at this feast, and they did not protest this public display of embarrassment and shame. Shma mina kanichelahu. Doesn't this prove that they're fine with this? They acquiesce to this behavior. They embrace this behavior. They sanction it. Eizel eichel b'kurtze b'malka. I am going to inform upon them to the emperor. Omar leila Caesar. He comes to the Caesar and he tells the Caesar. Caesar is the Hebrew word for Caesar. Just like in Russian you have the Tsar, it all comes from the word Caesar. Caesar, Caesar, Tsar. Amar lei. So he tells the Caesar, Mardu b'cha Yehudai. The Jews rebelled against you. Amar lei, the Caesar tells him, Mi Yemar. Who says this? Amalei Bar Kamsa says, Shadar Luhu Kurbana, Chazis Imekarvin Le. Send a sacrifice, send a carbon. And the fact is, halachically, non-Jews could offer offerings, karbanas, just as Jews could. And they're accepted, and they're offered in the Beis HaMikdash. Send a sacrifice and see if they offer it. If they offer it, obviously, they're on good terms with you. If they reject it, it means that they have rejected you. Azal Shadar Biyade Igla Tilsa. The king, the Caesar, sent with Bar Kamsa. Igla Tilsa means third calf of the family, in the family of cows, of calves. In other words, the best, the choicest calf. Bahadi Dekasi, as he's coming to Jerusalem, Shadibe Muma Benifs Vasayim. Bar Kamsa places a blemish in the upper lip of this calf. Va'amrile Bedukin Shaba'ayin. And others say in the apple of the eye. Duchte de ledidon havamumu ledidu lav mumuhu. He made sure that the blemish would be such that from the Gentiles' vantage point, it's not called a blemish. They would always offer such an animal on their own altars. But in halacha, in Jewish law, ledidon, for us, havamuma, it's a blemish that delegitimizes, doesn't allow the animal to be offered on the altar. In other words, if it would have been an obvious, blatant, explicit blemish, the reasons would be clear. But he did such a type of mum that they would never consider it a blemish in their own eyes. We'll soon see the way this story is recorded in the Medrash, Rabbi and Eicha. There is a very important detail here that qualifies and explains more of this detail of the story. Savur Rabbanan likruve mishum shloi malchus. The calf comes, it's brought from the Caesar. The rabbis believe that I have to offer it on the Mizbeach in the Beis HaMikdash because of Shalom Malchus, to remain at peace with the empire, despite the fact that halachically it would be forbidden. There would be a mitzvahs loisasa, a negative prohibition in Parshas Emer, that a mum, a blemished animal, may not be offered on the altar. But this is a different situation. Shloi Malchus. Maluhu Reb Zecharya ben Avkilas. There is a Tana, a sage, he's called Rabbi. He's a great sage at the time. Obviously, this is the last period of the second Beis HaMikdash. That means the first century after the Common Era, as mentioned. He says, Yoimru, Bali Mumen Kreven Lagabe Mizbeach. They might say and deduce from this incident that you can offer blemished animals on the altar. Savrur lemiktalei, the lalezel v'leima. So the rabbis thought, okay, we have no choice. We have to kill him. If we don't kill this man, he's going to go back and tell the king that we rebelled against the empire. In other words, they are defining him in halacha as somebody who's called a roidif. A roidif means somebody who is actively pursuing the life of an innocent person. Certainly here, not the life of one person. Every Jew living in the Holy Land and beyond, Jerusalem, the future of the Jewish people, he's an informer. He is coming to the emperor and saying, they rebelled against you. Eradicate Jerusalem. Destroy Judea. All right, if you could kill. Maluhu Reb Zecharya, the son of Avkilas, the same Reb Zecharya says, Yoimru matalbum b'kotchim yaharek. They're going to say, somebody who places a blemish in a holy animal has to be killed. There's no such a thing. It's a sin. You're not allowed to offer it. But there's no death penalty for blemishing a carbon. If you kill him, people might say it gets the death penalty. This is wrong. And therefore what happens, of course? They don't do anything. They don't sacrifice the animal on the altar because Reb Chaim ben Avkilas said, Yoimru, they're going to say, Bali mum kreven, you're allowed to offer a blemished animal. They don't kill him because you don't get the death penalty for blemishing a calf, even though it's the wrong thing to do. So nothing is done. Passivity was the answer. So what happens, of course? Naturally, he proves to the king that the calf was not offered, it was not sacrificed. The Jews reject him, the Jews loathe him, the Jews despise him. This is a dangerous region, and the subsequent events follow. Omar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, who lives 2 generations later. Rabbi Yochanan is the first generation of Amoraim, the editor of Talmud Yerushalmi, living in Eretz Yisrael, says Rabbi Yochanan, an vasnusoi shel Reb Zecharya ben Avkilas, hechrive es beiseinu, v'sorfa es heichaleinu, v'iglisanu me'artzeinu. An vasnusoi, which literally means the humility, the anava, ha'ish Moshe Anav, the humility, the anava of Zecharya, Reb Zecharya ben Avkilas, destroyed our home, burnt our temple, and exiled us from our land. Words of Rabbi Yochanan. An vasnusoi shel Zecharya ben Avkilas. Now these are fascinating words of Rabbi Yochanan. He knew very well what destroyed our Beis HaMikdash. It was Roman brutality and oppression. It was the fact that the Jews could not coexist with the Romans. It was that the Jews themselves were split. It that this man went and informed to the Jews on the Roman Caesar on the Jews. Reb Zecharya ben Avkilas was caught, as they say, between the rock and the hard ball, trying to figure out what's the right decision. But Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai almost puts the puts the onus on him and says his anova hechriva es beiseinu. What is the meaning of the word anvasnusoi? His humility. Where do we see here a display of humility? What did he mean anvasnusoi, the humility of Zecharya ben Avkilas? Where is the anova, the humility in this story? This story has been analyzed throughout the generations, of course, as every story in Gemara, and many different perspectives emerged. And today I want to explore 4 or 5 of these perspectives completely from different angles. We'll see one perspective, in Torah there's always pardes, pshat, remez, drush, soid, the literal interpretation, and intimations, hints, and homiletics, and deeper wisdom, esoteric ideas, etc. We'll explore one perspective from the world of remez, a perspective from the world of drush, perspective from the world of pshat, from the world of history, from the world of sod. Let's begin. A sefer known as Sefer Hagan v'derech Moshe. Masha shamati mipi Hagan hagadol mireino Rav Reb Avram Bruder Neireyeden shoy Rosh Yeshiva de Kehillah Kadisha Prague. He's quoting a man named Reb Avram, Rosh Yeshiva in Prague. Al madi'ise kol hamizgah mevi chema la'olam. There's a source of our sages, someone who's arrogant brings wrath to the world. What's the connection, quid per quo? You're arrogant, you bring wrath. So he says, this is the Gemara this site. The Gemara says in Masechah Saita Daf Hey, Amar Rav, Talmud Chacham tzerich sheyeh bayechad mishmini shebeshminis. Rav said a Talmud Chacham, a Torah scholar, has to have a little arrogance, an eighth of an eighth. Shmini shebeshminis of gaiva, a little arrogance he has to have. Amar Reb Nachem by Yitzchak loy menava loy mektzasa, not true, nothing. The Ksiv, the Pasuk says in Mishle, Tayavas Hashem kol gvalev. It's an abomination of God, someone who's arrogant. Loy menava loy mektzasa, nothing. Rav says a little bit shmini shebeshminis, which means, what's a shmini shebeshminis? An eighth of an eighth. 64th part of arrogance. Yeah, take arrogance, split it up into 64 pieces, and let him take one 64th part of it. That's called a shmini shebeshminis. The MaHarsha says, why does he give this number? Because samach gimel, if he would take a 63rd, it would be gas. Samach gimel is gas, arrogance. It's a samach daled. Take 64th of it. But Reb Nachem by Yitzchak says nothing, absolutely nothing. Upirshu MaHarsha, so the MaHarsha explain the pluktayu befidush tevas koil. They're arguing in the meaning of the pasuk in Mishlei Tezayin, Proverbs 16. Tayavas Hashem kol gvalev. It's the abomination of God. Kol. What does kol gvalev mean? Rav savar kol gvalev loshen kuloi. Koloi mar kuloi aser. Avol miktzas muter. V'Reb Nachem by Yitzchak mefarish kol afilu kol duhu aser. Tayavas Hashem kol gvalev. Rav says it's disgusting for Hashem. Kol gvalev. If the person is entirely arrogant, if all of him, kuloi, kol, from the word kuloi, all of him is gvalev, but a little bit of arrogance, a little bit of pride is nish geferlich. On the contrary, it's necessary. Reb Nachem Yitzchak says kol from the word of any. Toyavas Hashem kol, not all of him is gvalev. Kol gvalev, any gvalev. Kol chamira v'chamiya the ikar b'rishusi. We say erev Pesach. Any chametz, not kol all the chametz. It means also all. It can mean both. Kol chamira v'chamiya all. Kol also any gvalev, any vestige, any little tiny fraction of arrogance is forbidden. If this is the case, when it says kol, they have this argument. So wherever you have in Tanakh the word kol, you can have the same argument. Does it mean all or does it mean any? So when it says kol chamosai, he will not arouse all of his wrath. What does kol mean? You could make all or any. V'yuvan kol hamizgah. V'yuvan kol hamizgah. And when he say kol hamizgah, v'him kein mefarish, kol gvalev, davka kuloi aser avol miktzas mutter. So therefore, when you say kol gvalev, does it mean none or it means all not, but a little bit yeah? V'hu adin mefarish v'lo yoyer kol chamosai, shadavka kol hachem lo yoyer. Avol miktzas yoyer chas v'shalom. Im kein hu mevi chayma la'olam ad kan divrei pichachem chen v'sifsoisav doiva v'ois bakayver. So he says, therefore, the Chazal say kol hamizgah mevi chayma la'olam. Why? Because v'lo yoyer kol chamosai. According to this interpretation of Reb Nachman Bar Yitzchak, that you're not allowed to have any arrogance, because kol gvalev means nothing, no gvalev. V'lo yoyer kol chamosai. Layor kol chamasei means none of chamasei. According to the first interpretation, kol gvalev means it could be a little gvalev. So that's why kol chamasei also means there could be a little chema. So that's what his response to Rav is. According to you, who says that Talmid Chacham tzarich sheyeh by echad mishmeiner shebishminis. Talmid Chacham could have a little arrogance because Tayavas Hashem kol gvalev means what? A little bit, yes. So when it says v'lo yoyer kol chamasa, it means he shouldn't get angry completely, but a little bit angry, yes. So by you saying that somebody is entitled to have a little arrogance because you explained that kol doesn't mean nothing. Kol means a little bit. So lo yoyer kol chamasa means he won't give us all of his anger, but a little bit, yeah. So kol hamizgah mevi chayma la'olam. By being arrogant and relying on this interpretation of kol, kol means not to have a whole wave of arrogance, but a little bit, yeah. You're bringing chema, you're bringing ire to the world. Why? Because layar kol chamase doesn't mean layar kol chamase any of his anger. It means all of his anger, but a little bit of anger could come. Kol hamizgah mevi chema la'olam. This is his interpretation. Ubazen novin gemara de gitten. Amar Rabbi YY Jacobson Zecharya ben Avkilas echrives beiseinu v'kasha ma'u aloshen am vasnusi ha'ilelem en hoira asoi shepasek Zecharya shlei lahakriv es hakarban shel hakeser echrives beiseinu. What's the meaning of the word an vasnusi? The word should be hoira asoi. The instruction of Zecharya ben Avkilas destroyed our home. Ella de pluktehu b'pasek. We have a pasek in Emor koil asher boi mum loy sakrivu. Any animal that has a blemish, don't offer. Chad amar mum mamish davka dainu mechusar ever. V'chad amar afilu kol dehu. One view is kol mum means a real blemish, it's missing a limb. One says kol mum means any slight blemish already delegitimizes the animal. V'im kein mefadish, the kol mum lo sakrivu nami kol dehu mashma gamkin lo yakriv. V'lechen lo yotze lo hakriv. V'hechriv es beiseinu v'kalav. When it says kol mum, kol asher boi mum lo sakrivu, it could mean kol asher boi mum. If it has a whole mum, if it has a mum that is really a mum mamish, it's a full mum, it's missing a limb, then don't offer it. But if it's a tiny little mum, you could offer it. Or you could say kol asher boi mum, any mum, anything lo sakrivu, you shouldn't offer. So therefore, if you say kol asher boi mum lo sakrivu means nothing, you also hold Toyavas Hashem kol gvalev means nothing. In other words, absolute humility. So kol means absolutely nothing, not even the slightest arrogance. Zecharya ben Avkilas, who holds that even the tiny blemish cannot be offered, like this blemish, he holds that kol means nothing, not even a bit. In other words, his humility was the highest level of humility, because that's his interpretation in Toyavas Hashem kol gvalev. So an vasnusoy shel Zecharya ben Avkilas. It's his interpretation about humility. That koil means not even the slightest gvalev, that ultimately causes him to explain koil asher by mum loy sakrivu any mum, and therefore hechriva es beiseinu. This is what you call a remez or a drush in explaining the Gemara. The Chidah in the Sefer Reish David Vayigash brings this interpretation in the name of Rabbanei Ashkenaz, German rabbis. Let's see the Vilna Gaon's interpretation. Very interesting and completely different interpretation. Al pima sheshaninu b'mesechtes Sanhedrin lamed beis dinei nefoshes maschilin min atzad uberashi min atzad min aktanim shema yechayvenu hagadol v'lo yirtzu lachlek al dvarav mishum lo yisana al riv al dvarav shel gadol rav ksiv b'lo yud. There's a Mishnah in Sanhedrin daf lamed beis amud aleph, Sanhedrin 32a. It speaks about when a court convenes to deal with capital trials. Zog the Mishnah, Dinei nefoshes maschilin min hatzad. You always count the vote from the smaller ones, meaning from the sages who are younger or less prominent in the Sanhedrin. Why? If you start the vote with the greater sages, once the younger ones or the smaller ones see how they voted, they're going to be afraid, or they're going to feel that they cannot express their own opinion, and they're going to acquiesce to that opinion. The pasuk says, "Loisana al riv lintois" in Parshas Mishpata. So the Gemara in Sanhedrin Lamed Vav says, "Loisana riv" is without a yud, so you could read it, "Loisana al rav." Don't respond to the rav, to the great one. So the younger one of the Sanhedrin feels, how can I argue with the Rav, with the great one? So he's going to be silenced. Really, he needs to say his opinion. It's his opinion. That's what he believes is the truth. This is justice. But he's going to be intimidated, or he's going to feel it's the right thing. Loisana, how can he argue? So therefore, maschilin min atzad. You always start the vote with the smaller ones. Go from younger or smaller to older and greater. And that's how you do the vote, so you don't know what his opinion is, what the Nasi's opinion is, what the Av Bezdin's opinion is, and it won't manipulate, it won't cause you to curtail your view, your perspective. The Gemara gives another interpretation on Lamed Vav. We learned from David HaMelech. There's a pasuk that David HaMelech first had his servants make the verdict, and then himself for the same reason. V'hinei kefi anirim epashas haGemara ratzu Chatam Sofer Bar Kamsa. They wanted to kill him because somebody who comes to kill you first, kill him first. And this man was not innocent. He was trying to kill the Jews. He went to the king. But Zecharya, his verdict prevailed. Why did they listen to Zecharya? There was another view. It says clearly, the Gemara says that the rabbis first wanted to offer it, and then the rabbis, it says Savur Rabbanon, the rabbis, the sages, wanted to offer the animal, and then they wanted to kill him. So there was an argument here. The Zecharya said no, they said yes. Why did they all listen to him? The answer is, he must have been, says the Vilna Gaon, the greatest of all of them, and they didn't want to argue with him. They felt that that's their responsibility to surrender their opinion to his opinion, and therefore they embraced his view. But then we have a question. Why was his opinion said first? Dinei nefashos, you start first from the smaller ones. If Asks the Vilna Gaon a simple question. How did this work? There's a system in halacha. You follow the majority. I don't care if the greatest of the Sanhedrin says you do this. If the majority is against him, you follow the majority. Achrei rabim lahatas, you follow the majority. So how did this happen here? If he was the gadol, and that's why they embraced him, that means his view came last. Because dinei nefashos maschilin min atzad. So that means you had to start with the other ones. By the time you came to him and you don't know what he thinks yet, it would have been obvious that the majority holds that you should kill Bar Kamsa. If the majority holds you should kill Bar Kamsa, they had to tell him to Zecharya, you're outvoted and we have to kill him. This means that what happened? He said his opinion first. And because he said his opinion first, therefore when they started to vote, everyone agreed with him. Why? Because they felt internally they can't disagree with him. So now when they were counting the votes, the majority was like Zecharya ben Avkilas, because he said his opinion first. So here's a question. He said his opinion first. They all felt they have to agree with him because he's the Gadol. If he's the Gadol, he should have said his opinion last according to Halacha. That's the Vilna Gaon's question. How did this work? There had to be a vote. The majority or not? So you're saying it wasn't the majority, it was just him. So how did they follow him? Because everybody agreed with him because of internal pressure that they have to agree with him. In other words, he spoke first. He should have spoken last. If he would have spoken last, everything would have been good because they would have seen that the majority is against him. No, now you understand the Gemara on Vasnusa shel Zecharya. So the answer is Ela shel Zecharya mirayv an Vasnusa hechzik atzmi kiktanim shebeinayim. Because he was so humble, so therefore he considered himself as the cotton in the Sanhedrin, one of the smallest ones. He was really humble, so he right away said his opinion first. He thought when he says his opinion, that is called maschilin menatzad. You start with the smallest. So he jumped up. He said, hey, this is what I say. Or number one, and number two, number three, but in the beginning. Once he spoke, their mouths were shut. I can't argue. So ultimately the churban happens. It's the humility of Zecharya ben Avkilas. The humility of him speaking up first because he really considered himself to be a cotton. And therefore he speaks first, not the Gadol of the Sanhedrin. This is the view of the Vilna Gaon. I saw it also in other Sfarim brought in the names of some other sources. That's a good question. You're saying the order of the Gemara is Savur Rabbanon, Likruvi Mishum Shalom Malchus, and then he argued. And then it's a Savur Lemikdele, right? They decided that they should kill him, but he argued. But the truth is, if you look into the Gemara, it actually fits very well. The Gemara doesn't say that they said you should kill him. The Gemara says Savur. Savur. What does Svara mean? They thought. They thought. It actually fits very interestingly. It fits very well. They thought. They really held you have to kill him. But he spoke up first. And he said, how could you kill such a person? Now maybe one or two said it. It's possible. Bin Hatzah doesn't mean necessarily he was the first. Maybe he was one, he was two, he was three. But there was still plenty of Dayanim to be persuaded by his position and say, he must be right. Who's going to argue with Reb Zecharya, the Gadol Hador? The man knows much more. I'm going to sit and argue with him. I'm not arguing. You know, they surrendered their mind because Loisana Araf. So Savur, really, if he would have spoken last, you would see that the majority says, kill the man. He's a roidif. But since he spoke up in the beginning or early on or first, so therefore their svara never came out. That's how I would answer your question. But let's now take this to the next step. If you could turn to your page 2, to your second page of your sources. How many times is Reb Zecharya ben Avkilas mentioned in our sources? In Mishnayos, in Gemara, in Bavli, Yerushalmi, Medrash. And the answer is, this time and once more. Once more. Which is also very interesting. If he is considered the greatest of the great, we know one more thing about him. One more statement that he makes when it comes to the laws of Shabbos. Take a look at a Tosefta, Masechta Shabbos, Perik Yud Zayin, Dalet. Tosefta, of course, is a Braisa. The Braisa, which is a combination of two words, Bar Yesa, Braisa, which means brought in from outside. Bar means outside, Yesa means brought in, because when the Mishnah was authored by its editor, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi and his colleagues, there were many texts that he did not enter, that he did not insert into the Mishnah. So there was a parallel Mishnah, parallel text that was authored by some of the students of Rebbe and his colleagues, known as Brisa, which elucidates and explains many of the ideas in the Mishnah. Sometimes there's many contradictions, and much of Talmud Bavli is the attempt to reconcile between Mishnahs and Brisas, Vahatnan, Vahatanya, or elucidate Mishnahs through Brisas, which was a parallel text that elucidates many Mishnahs, or clarifies, or brings up new problems and new dilemmas. Says the Tosefta. A little intro to understand this Tosefta. We know that our sages introduced in the laws of Shabbos a concept of Muktzah. The word Muktzah means set aside, segregated, set apart. What is the definition of Muktzah? It's not a biblical, in most situations, it's not a biblical violation. It's a rabbinic violation. And what that is, that before Shabbos, a person makes, so to speak, hypothetically, a person makes a mental inventory of items that are usable on Shabbos and items that you have no use for them on Shabbos. Items that are usable on Shabbos you can move around. Items that you have no use for them on Shabbos you can touch but you can't move them. So for example, a hammer, a screwdriver, a drill, a brick, a laptop, an iPhone, these are things that the Jew doesn't have use for them on Shabbos. Raw flour, raw pasta, raw potato, raw beans, these are raw foods. What are you going to do with them on Shabbos? What are you doing with raw potatoes or raw flour on Shabbos? You have to knead them, you have to bake them. Kneading is forbidden, baking is forbidden. So raw flour becomes muktzah, raw pasta becomes muktzah, a hammer becomes muktzah, a brick becomes muktzah. What are you doing? Construction on Shabbos, these are muktzah. A book, you have use on Shabbos. A bowl, a plate, a table, a fork, a knife, a couch, a chair, a bookcase, etc. A pillow, a blanket, a coat, a shirt, pants, a hat. These are things that you have use for them on Shabbos. You use them on Shabbos, they're not muktzah. Says the Tosefta. Beis Hillel Loimrim, Beis Hillel says, Magbiyin me'ala shulchan atzamai suklipin. At the end of a meal, you have on the table bones and shells, husks. They're not edible. If they're edible, like crumbs, little crumbs of bread, it's edible. So if it's edible, it's food. All food that's edible is not muktzah. Bread is not muktzah, of course. Salad is not muktzah. All foods are not muktzah. But the bones and the shells, if you have an animal who's going to eat them, that means edible. It's not muktzah. But we're talking about bones and shells if you have no animals there, or they're not edible even for animals. It's not like banana peels and you have monkeys around, like in Umschlanga in South Africa. When I was in a hotel over there, some monkeys come in and they just eat your food. So then nothing is muktzah. But in this situation where you're not going to have exactly these animals eating the bones or the shells, even if you have animals around, Beis Hillel says you might think you can't touch them after the meal. You could lift them up and put them in the garbage. Beis Shammai says, Mesalik es hatavla kulo menara. Instead of actually taking the bones with your hand or with a knife, you should actually lift up the whole tavla, the whole board, what we would call the tablecloth, and shake it off with all the bones into the garbage. That's the argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. I should note that in Masechta Shabbos and Masechta Beitz in the beginning, this argument is brought reversed. Beis Hillel is the stringent one and Beis Shammai is the lenient one, but the Gemara brings over there from Reb Nachman that you have to reverse it like we have it here. Beis Hillel is lenient, Beis Shammai is stringent. Zecharya ben Avkilas. Zecharya, the son of Avkilas, did not practice, not like Beis Shammai, not like Beis Hillel. What he would do is while he was eating, when he got to the peel or he got to the bone, he spit it out with his tongue. He spit it out behind the couch where he was sitting. He didn't want to do it in front of the couch. It wouldn't be nice. People were sitting. But he would turn around. Everyone had a little bed. Everybody would sit on a little bed, like a little couch. That's how they would sit and eat. So noitel, he would take it while it's in his mouth. That's what the MaHarsha explained. And with his tongue, he would spit it out behind the couch. So in other words, not only would he not do like Beis Hillel, who says you can actually lift them up and throw them out, even like Beis Shammai, who says don't touch them, but pick up the whole table, or pick up the whole tablecloth, or pick up the whole tablet, the whole brettel, the board, and throw it out. He wouldn't do that either. Instead, he would spit it out from his mouth while he was eating, so he had no contact with it ever. Because as he was eating it, he got rid of it, and he didn't have to deal with it till after Shabbos. I guess after Shabbos, he could sweep up the floor. Okay, this seems like a legitimate three-way machloikus that the whole Shas is busy with. Beis Shammai is stringent, Beis Hillel is lenient, and Zecharya ben Avkilas is really stringent. Beis Shammai doesn't work for him, Beis Hillel doesn't work for him. The response to this is mind-staggering. Amar Rabbi YY says, An vasnusoi shel Zecharya ben Avkilas sarfes ha'heichel. The humility of Zecharya ben Avkilas burned down the Beis HaMikdash. He didn't want to touch bones and husks on Shabbos. That's responsible for Sreifas Beis HaMikdash. It's like, whoa. You can argue with him. You say, Zecharya, you're being machmer, you're wrong. Beis Shammai is right, Beis Hillel is right. What are you doing? The whole Shas is filled with that. But this type of response of Rabbi YY, poor Zecharya ben Avkilas, Rabbi Yochanan blamed him for the Churban Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi YY blamed him. But Rabbi Yochanan at least is talking about an event that happened right there. He didn't want to offer the king's animal. He didn't want to kill the roitif, the murderer, the pursuer. Here, he didn't want to pick up a bone on Shabbos. He didn't want to lift up a tablecloth that had muktzah on it on Shabbos, that had food that's not edible. And Rabbi YY says, this is responsible for Churban Beis HaMikdash. In fact, the Gemara in Shabbos Kuf Mem Gimel says, Amru alav Reb Zecharya ben Avkilas sheyamachzer panav achorei amita v'zark. Here you see the interpretation of the Tosefta. He would turn his face around behind his couch and throw out these shells and husks that would remain not edible on Shabbos. How do we understand this? How do we make sense of this? A whole other dimension of Zecharya ben Avkilas. So let's see Chatam Sofer. Another dimension in all of this. Chatam Sofer Masechta Gittin Daf Nun Vav Amud Aleph. Zog the Chatam Sofer. It's a little bit winding, but you see all of the commentaries here are somewhat winding because it's difficult to fathom this, to understand this. Yes, the second source sheet, the third source from the top. The second source sheet, the third source from the top, it says, Chatam Sofer Gittin Nun Vav Aleph. You see? Chatam Sofer was written by Reb Moshe Sofer, Reb Moshe Schreiber, who was, of course, the chief rabbi of Pressburg, which was then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the whole empire was dissolved during the First World War in 1914, 100 years ago. A little more than 100 years ago, but so Pressburg today is known as Bratislava. That's the city where the Chatam Sofer lived and where he practiced, and he was really one of the leading figures of Hungarian and Austrian Jewry, not only himself, but in terms of the students and disciples that the Chatam Sofer created. He wrote a commentary on Shas, and this is what he wrote. The Chatam Sofer passed away, I think, in the year Tov Reish, 1840. Zok the Chatam Sofer. B'Tosefta, this is in Gittin, in the Gemara here with the Churban. B'Tosefta Perek Yitzayin the Masechta Shabbos, he quotes it. Beis Shammai Yomrim Magbiyim Ala Shulchan Atzamas Klippos B'Sil Magbiya Tav L'Kula Menara. And by the way, the verdict in Shulchan Aruch is like Beis Shammai, that we don't pick up the bones and the shells unless they're edible. We take the plastic or the tablecloth or the board and we shake it off into the garbage. Because there's a machlokes in Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel how serious we take muktzah. According to Beis Hillel, it's the shita of Reb Shimon, who was very lenient with muktzah. Beis Shammai is the shita of Rabbi Yehuda, who was very stringent with muktzah. And we follow usually the shita that is more, it depends on the situation, but often we follow the shita that is stringent with muktzah, and therefore we shake off the board. So the Chatam Sofer, Reb Zecharya ben Avkilas, Lo HaYoseh Loike Beis Shammai V'Loike Beis Hillel, Anoita Chamash L'Chachrei Amita, Amir Reb YY Am Vasnusa Reb Zecharya ben Avkilas Sarfa Heichel. V'hu Tamua. And this is very absurd, very strange. Gam lefarish pirish Rashi an vasnusoi savlonusoi. There's something else that Chatam Sofer wants to address. Rashi in Gittin, on the words, the humility of the Zecharya destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, Rashi says an vasnusoi is savlonusoi. Savlanut means patience, to be soivel, to what? Tolerating, extremely tolerating. What was Reb Zecharya tolerant of? Rashi says he didn't kill him. He refused to kill him. So Rashi right away changes Anvasnusai to Savlonusai. He explains Anvasnusai in terms of Savlonusai. Not humility, but patience. Savlonus. Says the Chatam Sofer, Nidel Aniyas Daiti. Why was he so afraid that people will say, you can offer a blemished animal, or you get a death penalty for making a blemish? His chash was the Chilul Hashem, the desecration of Hashem. What does this mean? Halayadu koloilam she'ein krevim balei mumin ve'ein hamatal mum chayev misa. Everybody, what's the Chilul Hashem? Or in other words, some Sofer is saying, you'll tell everybody what happened. What's the problem? Everyone is going to say, oh, we offered a blemished animal. No, we don't offer a blemished animal. This happened to be from the Caesar. When you'll be the Caesar, we'll also offer your behemoth. In the meantime, you're not the case. Yechaim Yankel. Yechaim Yankel from Bnei Brak. We're not going to offer you a blemished animal. I mean, it's such a complicated story. They kill him. We're going to start killing? No, not everybody who makes a blemish do we kill. This guy made a blemish in the Roman emperor's animal. It's the superpower of the time. He was trying to destroy the people. We had no choice. So what's bothering them? So some Sofer says, "The Chilul Hashem what? Halaydu koloilam shein krevim balei mumin ve'ein hamatal mum chayev mis." Yadu koloilam. The whole world knows that we don't offer blemished animals. The whole world also knows that we don't kill people who make blemishes and karbonas. It's not that Jewish history started right then. The Beis HaMikdash has been around for 400 years. The first Beis HaMikdash has been around for another 400 years. Altogether, 830 years. This one 410, this one 420. Hundreds of years, Jews don't offer blemished animals. Hundreds of years, Jews don't kill people who made a blemish in an animal. So suddenly they're going to think this one event reversed a millennia of Jewish history. Really more than a millennia, already back to the Mishkan. Elo, al yedeze yisu v'yitnu mazares b'levana b'shoyrij v'yisoid as chalas hamais. Mazares b'levana means the Yentis and Shtetl are going to start, all the Yachnas are going to start talking about this. Killing somebody, you're not doing it somewhere in a dark alley in a cellar in Stalin's gulags. This is being done by the Beis HaMikdash. Somebody's going to find out about this. This is a public story here. The king sent him. So right away, no one is going to say that you could make a mum in a carbon, or you should kill everybody who makes a mum. But they're going to start discussing the shoyrish v'yisoid as chalas hamayis. What happened here? How did this happen? Basically, this guy was guilty because he wanted to surrender the Jewish people to the Malchus, to the Roman regime. So now they're going to ask, how does a Jew come to do this? Where did this grow from? And the answer is going to be, he was at a party, and they threw him out, and the rabbis were sitting, and nobody protested. And all of the Jewish people, the Hadyotim, the simple Jews, will forever look at the Chachmei Yisrael, at the leaders, in a very, very derogatory way. Their reputation will be desecrated forever, that this is how they can behave at a party. Somebody was publicly thrown out, publicly ashamed, publicly rejected. Nobody stood up to say a word. How do you embarrass somebody in public? And everyone will know this because they're going to find out why this came about, and they're going to go back to that story. That's what was bothering Reb Zecharya. It wasn't just what he said, this incident. They're going to say, you make a blemish in an animal. He means the next step. It's a domino effect. They're going to say, you make a blemish in an animal. You don't make a blemish in an animal. So why'd they offer this animal? You're not allowed to offer a blemished animal. Or if you kill him, well, you don't kill such a person. So why'd they kill him? So they're going to analyze the story and go back to the original story. And they go back. The result is going to be, this is how rabbis behave. This is how Chachmei Yisrael, this is how the Jewish leaders, the Jewish sages behave. And this could be can have a catastrophic results. Omnam, says the Chatam Sofer, Mi sheyesh lo moyach bekotkodoi. Yedei nevas hatakop, anybody who has a brain in his skull, literally, understands ki loy dover kotten hu lizbelzeh. Says, 1 second. You wanted that the Chachamim should do what? They should protest. They should attack the host. They should say, no, he's staying here. But anyone who has a brain, says the Chatam Sofer, understand it's not simple. You can't just blame the Chachamim as being mediocre, spineless, passive people who couldn't care less about human dignity, and because somebody invited them to a party, they're going to let this Rosh Merusha embarrass somebody in public. You understand that this is not a simple situation. Chatam Sofer, lovely, in a very interesting interpretation, analyzes the story. He says, let's think about this. Mistame Bar Kamsa Rosh Meyoidei. We can assume quite logically that Bar Kamsa was no tzatska. He was ganza feine Rasha. How does the Chatam Sofer know this? I'll tell you how he knows this. You were thrown out of a party by Jews. It's not nice. It's disgusting. Feels horrible. Right? You may need therapy for 10, 20 years, and you should maybe charge the host for doing it. Granted. Why are you running to Rome? Why are you running to Vespasian, to Nero? Why are you running to Turkmedai, to Stalin, to Himmler? What are you running to these people? What are you running to Arafat, to Ahmadinejad, to Rouhani, to Nasrallah? You have an issue, I got it. This guy was disgusting, he embarrassed you in public. So that's why you want millions of Jews to die? That's why you want Rome to destroy? What type of person is this? You see, what are you dealing with? Who are you dealing with? So he says, Bar Kamsa Mersh, V'yakire Yerushalayim lo yoyishrim b'mesib elim kein yoydim mimeisav imam. It was known, Chazal say, Yakire Yerushalayim. Yakire Yerushalayim means the precious Jews, the pious Jews of Yerushalayim would not sit by a Suda unless they knew intimately the person they were sitting with and what type of person he was, that he was a righteous person. So now understand the Bala Suda also. He knew who this guy was. It's not that he was his enemy because he owed him $3,500, he didn't pay him back for a job, and therefore he became a sworn enemy. No! This man was probably a Rosh Merusha. He was an unscrupulous person. He was a rotten person. He was a sour person. Look what he did at the end. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. People get insulted. People get destroyed. They have a taina. You're running to Rome. How do you sit with a Suda by this person? Which also explains what I started the shir with. If somebody offers you $80,000 to pay you for a meal, even if he's your enemy, take it, you fool. Not if he is a different type of enemy. He may have not been a personal enemy. He may have been an enemy in the sense, how could you befriend such a person? He's a lowlife. He's a mushchis. He's a metuav. He's a rush. He's a meshukitz. He's a sickening person. Running to the Romans because he has a problem with the Jewish community. Zol Zayin, his accusations are true. What they're doing is wrong, but it shows a character. You can't sit by a meal. So now he's going to buy his way out. He's going to bribe his way in. He's going to say, I'll pay you for the whole meal. I want to be accepted. I am not for sale. I'm not going to sell my people. I'm not going to sell my mother. I'm not going to sell my soul. I'm not going to sell my God. He throws him out. Chatam Sofer says, analyze the story. I mean, I'm adding here some fluff, but analyze the story and you'll understand that there was a justification. In other words, you may even say it was the idealistic thing to do. It was the idealistic thing to do. It would have been easy not to throw him out. It would have been nice not to throw him out. But it was the right thing to do. You can't tolerate such a person here. Some people have to be thrown out. Some people have to be thrown out in public. You could ask him to leave privately. Sometimes maybe shame is not a bad thing in this situation. That's what the Chatam Sofer is saying. And now if he would have not let this guy go, if he would have let him stay, all the Chachamim would have to leave. Because they have to sit, people they sat with a Suda were people of sterling reputation. So they now have to leave the meal. So what is going to happen here? He's going to stay himself with Bar Kamsa. You understand what type of party what a party it's going to look like. They say that Arizal had a student, Reb Moshe Alshich. Rabbi Moshe Alshich wrote a commentary on Chumash. It's called Toras Moshe, Chumash and Tanakh. It's an extraordinary, long, elaborate commentary by the Alshich, lived in Sfas in the 16th century. He would give a drasha, a speech, a shir Shabbos afternoon, and from this he wrote up his commentary in the Alshich on Chumash and Tanakh. And it was a very popular drasha. He was a huge baldarsh. And once the Arizal came, it was Parshas Chayesara. He was speaking about the first story of Ephron and Sarah and Avram and Moris Machpelah, etc. In the middle of the drasha, imagine the Arizal, who was his Rebbe, stands up and leaves. Now you can understand what that did to the Alshich. It took out all the chayas from him. He finished, but he felt lifeless. He felt terrible rejection. He goes after that Tariza and he says, why do you leave? He says, I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you what happened. He says, you understand, when you give a drasha about Avram, who do you think comes? Avram Avinu came. And Sarah came. They all came to listen. Ephron came. Whoever you spoke about, their souls came into the shir. In middle, the shir was going very well. And I saw that you're starting to feel arrogant. And your arrogance was becoming bigger and bigger. And now Avram can't deal with arrogance, so he ran away. Sarah also ran away. Who stayed? Ephron. I didn't want to remain alone with Ephron, so I also left. Yeah. So Chatam Sofer says, the Chachamim would leave. They can't be at a meal with this person. So he would stay alone with this person. He had to make a choice. Whose leaves? The Chachamim or him? So he chased him out. So anybody who has a brain to analyze the story knows it's not a Chilul Hashem that he was thrown out. There's justification. At least there's another side, another way of looking at it. Zecharya ben Avkilas, Savlin Gadol. Zecharya ben Avkilas was a very different type of person. He was a moededike savlin, tremendously tolerant person. He was fine with every type of person at his table. You say this guy is despicable, low life. Zecharya ben Avkilas just had that quality to tolerate every type of person. For him, this would be a desecration of God's name to throw out a Jew publicly, whoever that person is. That's the view of Zecharya ben Avkilas. V'hinei ein b'Shabbos kuf mem aleph magbiya me'al hashulchan v'reish perek hamad mesechta beitza. We have this whole sugya of the argument in Bishami and Basilil. Upnei Yeshua comes the Pnei Yeshua and says the time of the Bishami and Basilil. The b'munachim al hashulchan have a graph gedev shal rei al kein mutter l'nair hatavla. The Pnei Yeshua says the argument of Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai is not if you hold from Muktzah or not. It's something else. There's a concept in Muktzah called Gerev Sharei. Gerev Sharei means a bottle of excrement. Gerev is a flask. You translate Gerev, a flask, a bottle, a barrel of Rei. Rei is excrement, soya. The halacha by Muktzah is, if there's a Gerev Sharei, your child comes into the dining room middle of lunch and decides to do what he has to do, the 1-year-old baby to do what he has to do, right in the dining room. What he leaves on the floor is not edible. So l'chayr it's muktzah. Are you allowed to clean it up on Shabbos? The halacha is anything that is disgusting and abominable and detesting, people are allergic to it, there's no halacha of muktzah, meaning you could remove it. You don't need kalach hayad. You don't have to do it in a bizarre way, indirect way. You could pick it up and move it. But this don't only mean excrement. It means anything disgusting. So, for example, there's people who love knacking semichkas on Shabbos, sunflower seeds. Yeah, papitas. They sit, and a whole Shabbos afternoon they could sit for 3.5 hours. And the knack that's called in Yiddish knacken semichkas. They open their unfallifies. It's a whole avodah. They put it in their mouth. They taste it. They look. They lick. And this is how they analyze the world. So those who follow, of course, the psukim of the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya, know that in the Siddur he was very machmir not to crack any nut on Shabbos because boirer and muktzah. He said it often comes to boirer and muktzah, and therefore, if it's not cracked before Shabbos, you shouldn't crack. But halachically in Shulchan Aruch, you're allowed to crack a nut on Shabbos. It's not a problem. He himself says it in Shulchan Aruch, Harav, you're allowed to. So after 2 hours, when you come to the dining room table, you know what it looks like, yeah? It looks like the Tower of Babel, made of sunflower seeds. Basically what it looks like. The guy sitting there has no problem. He's ready to go for another 2 hours. His wife, soll sein gesund, walks into the dining room and she says, this is disgusting. Get rid of it. But now he's frum, it's muktzah. I can't touch it, it's muktzah. It's not edible. All you have is shells. There's no nuts there. It's shells. This is a classic situation of gerev sharei. It's horrible, it's disgusting. You're allowed to get rid of it. Are you allowed to lechatchila make a gerev sharei that shouldn't apply muktzah? No. But if you have a gerev sharei, you're allowed to get rid of it. That's called gerev sharei, a bottle of excrement. So the Pnei Yeshua says, this is the heter of Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel holds of muktzah. But he holds it's disgusting. Bones and shells are disgusting. It makes people feel disrespectful. Mitzat kavod habriyas, the Chazal relaxed the Isser of muktzah. B'diavad, if you have it already. And therefore you're allowed to clean it up. Even Beis Shammai says, you can pick up the board and throw it out. Why does Zecharya ben Avkilas argue? He says no. So the Chatam Sofer says, I'll tell you why. Because of his tolerance. Because of his savlanut. The type of person he was. Things didn't get to him like they get to other people. Some people have a short fuse, a short circuit. Zecharya ben Avkilas was a different type of person. Zecharya ben Avkilas yachal lizbel al shulchanai. He can have anything and anybody on his table. Just like he can have this Rasha Merusha Kamsa at his table. He can also have disgusting food at his table. Al shulchanai is an interesting, a very cute sushtal. On his table, everything goes. All types of fahakta foods, rotten foods, shells and husks and bones, and all types of people, rotten people also sit at his table. If so, im kain, al kain, asuloi l'nair hatavla. He can't get, it's not a gerev sharei, it's muktzah, it's not edible. He's not allowed to move it. Ukein ze yachal lizbel bar kamsa al shulchanai. So he can also have bar kamsa. Al kain omer Rabbi YY an v'snus shel Zecharya ben Avkilas hechriva es beiseinu. So now Rabbi YY says, you're not going to get rid of the bones and the husks. Everything goes on your table. That anova, that's savlanut. That's why Rashi says savlanus, not humility. The patience, the excessive tolerance. That you can tolerate piles of bones and shells on your table. Let me tell you, Chevra, that level of extreme tolerance destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. Why? Because Zecharya ben Avkilas could not make peace with the sages expelling him from the sages allowing him to be expelled from the house. He felt it would be a tremendous chilul Hashem that has to be avoided at all costs. The story has to remain behind doors, and therefore they should not do anything with the carbon, not offer the sacrifice, not kill him, which would only create a ruckus and a commotion and a conversation of the muzaras belavana, those that stand under the moon and want to understand, the night owls who want to understand what happened, analyzing all the news events. Let's keep it under the rugs, and Zecharya ben Avkilas therefore rejects the option of offering the animal on the mizbeach or killing him, and as a result of that, hechriva es beiseinu. It's interesting. When you look at the Gemara simply, the literal interpretation is, the Gemara, of course, does not exonerate Bar Kamsa from what he has done going to Rome. But the Gemara also says, Akamsa u Bar Kamsa charav Yerushalayim. Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, and tells us the whole story, and seems to indicate the fact that seems to indicate the truth that the fact that they did not protest was not something positive. So even though the Chatam Sofer here gives the justification for it, because this explains why they did not protest, at the end of the day, they are not exonerated for that. Which tells us something very, very profound. That before you shame somebody in public, before you throw somebody out of shul, before you throw somebody out of your home, before you throw somebody out of your suda, even if you are doing it for idealistic purposes. And not only that, one day you will face heaven and say, I'm the only guy who's not for sale. Everybody else here is for sale. Everybody in this world, you give them a couple of dollars, shh. They say there was once a rabbi, he was having a din Torah, 2 people. So somebody stuck under the table, he put in an envelope, and suddenly it started to gravitate towards his direction. The rabbi opens up the envelope later and he sees $4,500, and that person won the court case. The opponent comes to the rabbi later and he says, listen, I know everybody needs money. I need money, he needs money, you need money, but you're considered a big, big, big Rav. I didn't know that you would sell your soul for $4,500. A guy like you, I thought, at least $500,000, $100,000, epis of MaHarsha, $4,500 you sell your soul to Shoichet. Come on, it's like a choshev yid. Your price should be somewhat higher. He said in Yiddish, "Du verkaufst the neshama for $4,500. You sell your soul for $4,500." Rav says, you don't understand. Ich hab schon verkauft meine Neshama 30 Jahre zurück für $5 Million. Jetzt ist als Revach Naki. He says, I already sold my soul 30 years ago. Yeah. $5 million. There was a court case. I got $5 million. I sold my soul. Now everything is just profit. Now it's just interest. Another 4,000. Now it's just Revach Naki. So this guy comes the man, the host, we don't know his name, says, I'm the guy who doesn't take bribes. I'm the only real person around here. Everybody else is for sale. I see a guy, I tell him who he is, I throw him out of the house, he offers me $100,000, I say, not me. You could do this with other people, not me. That's the perspective, and it's a perspective. And it's a perspective that still exists in the Jewish world by certain individuals. They consider themselves kanoim, zealots, and they will not sell their God for anything, not even for human dignity. But here we see another perspective. Here we see a different perspective that we have to take into consideration. So this is the Chatam Sofer's view. Now, the Chatam Sofer is the Chatam Sofer. But I want to make one ha'ara about this Chatam Sofer. And that is that the whole story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, before it went into Gemara, it went in first to Medrash Rabbah. Medrash Rabbah in Eicha Rabbah, Parsha Dalet, Piska Gimel, has the whole story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, with one detail that the Gemara omits, for whatever reason. A lot more details in the Medrash. The Medrash tells a whole story. And the Medrash also adds there that says there was a party, and the rabbis were sitting, and the man threw him out of the party, and he went to the Caesar, and he told the emperor of Rome that the Jews rebelled, and he sent him a sacrifice, but he said, send it to me with a messenger. Bring, not only me, bring somebody else who will testify. That the Gemara doesn't say. And he sends it with a messenger. So there's two people. So now he has to make a blemish that the other one shouldn't know that he blemished. So middle of the night he blemishes it in a way that the Gentiles don't know that it's a blemish. So the one who's traveling with him from the Roman emperor doesn't know he did anything. Because in the morning he looks at the calf. He doesn't see there's a blemish. Only the Jews consider it a blemish. That's why he had to do it that way. And now what happens is they go and the whole story happens. And the Chachamim want to offer it, but they don't offer it. They want to kill him, but they end up not killing him. And the messenger goes back to the Roman emperor, the Roman messenger, not the Jew, who says what happened. Which of course puts into question the words of Rashi, that Zecharya ben Avkilas tolerated the man that he didn't kill him. Even if they would have killed him, this man would have gone back to Rome and say, by the way, they killed the Jew. So it wouldn't have helped. Unless they would have killed this man too, which probably the emperor could find out about that. But there's one detail here I want to focus on in this medrash. Take a look. Eicha Rabbah, Parsha Dalet Piske Gimel. You see? You know who was at the party? V'hoya Sham, Reb Zecharya ben Avkilas. He was at the party. V'hoy sasipik biyade limchas, v'loy micha. He could have protested, but he didn't protest. The whole theory of the Chatam Sofer is contradicted by this medrash. He was at the party. He is the one who was quiet. Chatam Sofer says he would have never been quiet because he could not tolerate throwing out a Jew from a party. He would have kept and made sure that this Jew stays Everybody could go on his table, but it turns out that the story happened with him according to the Medrash. And the Medrash continues, An Vasnusai Shel Zecharya ben Avkilas Sarfes HaHeichel. Which An Vasnusai? This one. That he did not say anything when the host threw him out. In the Medrash, it's not the An Vasnusai of saying, don't kill him. That story at the end is not attributed to the Zecharya ben Avkilas. That's only in Gemara. In Medrash, Zecharya ben Avkilas, his name comes in as somebody sitting at the party and being quiet, and it's this humility that destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. So we have here 3 stories about Zecharya ben Avkilas in Shas, in Chazal. Number 1 in Gittin, he says, don't offer the animal and don't kill Bar Kamsa. Number 2 in Shabbos and Tosefta, don't touch the bones and the husks on the table. Number 3 in Medrash, he was at the party and he didn't say anything. That's another question. Why is that humility? Why is that called humility? Just like we asked, why is it called humility when you don't want to kill somebody? Why is that called humility? Or why is it called humility when you don't want to offer a blemished animal? Good question. Why do we call it An Vasnusai? But the whole idea of the Chatam Sofer, of course, becomes deeply questionable when you see this Medrash. So Zecharya ben Avkilas, his whole concern was the Chilul Hashem of the Talmidei Chachamim, that they didn't protest, because he said you have to protest. He is the one who didn't protest. So now, very briefly, we're going to do 3 more views. The historical view, the straightforward view, the simple view, and finally, a spiritual Hasidic interpretation by the Morinayim. We now turn away from Jewish sources to a very different type of source. It's also a Jewish source, but it's a different type of source. It's called Yosifun, Josephus. The Wars of the Jews, Milchamas HaYehudim. As you know, Josephus Flavius was a Jew. His name was Yosef ben Matisyo. He was a Kohen. He was part of the revolt against the Romans. He surrendered to the Romans. He acquiesced. He gave himself up. He found favor in the eyes of Vespasian, and he was taken into the Romans. And he was a writer. He was a historian. So he is the one who chronicled Jewish history, including the history of Churban Bayesheni, the sources that we have for that story in detail, outside of our own sources among the Chazal, come from Josephus Yosifun. Yes, there's been long debates if the Romans altered the text, if the Christians altered the text, how reliable it is. But no question that the Svarim, the books of Yosifun, or Josephus Flavius, his last name, it's the name of Vespasian's family. Basically, to honor Vespasian, his own name, last name Flavius, was the name of Vespasian's family, to show kinship to the Romans. And he was obviously a very controversial figure. But his Svarim are brought among the rabbis and the sages throughout all of the generations. In Milchamas HaYehudim, the Wars of the Jews, Dalet Aleph, I quote you Josephus, Yosifun. V'roshei hakanoim hoyu. The leaders of the Zealots, the Kanoim, were the groups who decided we're fighting against the Romans. There was a huge debate and war in Jerusalem. The Kanoim, the Zealots, the Sikrikin decided war against Rome. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, you won't succeed. We need to make compromises with Rome. They burned down the food in Yerushalayim to force the Jews into war. They forced the Jews into war. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai sneaked out of Yerushalayim as a corpse because they wouldn't let any person leave Yerushalayim. They wanted there should be a fortress that the Jews would have to fight, and that ended up in an absolute disaster. But this was a huge fight in Yerushalayim that happened. The Gemara describes in Gittin at length the catastrophe. They're called the Kanoim. Roshei HaKanoim, who were the leaders? Ha'echad Elazar ben Shimon HaShenemen al HaKanoim ma'od ki Maskal Imtzi Eitzav v'Tachbula v'Hevel L'malei Acharei Tzasei. One was man named Elazar ben Shimon. He was very, very trustworthy by the Zealots. He was brilliant, and he always knew how to get them to follow his advice. Hasheni, Zecharya ben Ampiklus. Shneim mishpachas Koyanim. The second one is Zecharya, and his father's name he puts here as ampiklus, which is not very different than avkilas. In fact, what does the word avkilas mean? Avkilas, I don't expect anybody here to know, but in ancient Greece, in Lashon Yavonis, in the ancient language of Greece, in Greek language, avkilas means humble. Noyach lebriyos, somebody who's easy to get along with. Somebody who's easy to placate, easy to satiate, not a prima donna, not somebody who's always demanding and a chronic complainer. That's what avkilas means in Greece. It's interesting, they keep on talking about his humility. His father's name was Avkilas. Is it because his father's name was Avkilas that they apply this term to him? Or is it because this term was so close to him that they gave him this name Avkilas? But Avkilas means humility in Greek. Ampiklus is a very similar word in ancient Greek, which means somebody who's praised, somebody who's likable, somebody that people praise him from every angle. If it's the same person, we have here a whole different take on the story. Reb Zecharya ben Ampiklus, Reb Zecharya ben Avkilas believed that you have to fight against the Romans. Do not make peace with them. Don't take his offerings. Don't take his sacrifices. Fight him. Fight them. Let's get rid of them. They hate us. Great. We hate them too. Let's go to war. In fact, Josephus brings a story that the Roman emperor would send sacrifices regularly, and the zealots rejected them. He doesn't say the name Zecharya ben Avkilas, but he says the zealots rejected, and the other rabbis begged them, said, don't do this, offer their animals, and they said, no, we want to go to war. So he sees this whole episode in Gemara as an outright confrontation between Jews. Can you interpret this in the Gemara itself? It would be hard with the word anvasnusai. This doesn't seem like the word anvasnusai. But here I refer you to Rabbi YY Margolius. Rabbi YY Margolius was one of the Gaoni Yerushalayim. And in his interpretation on Gemara, he says, anvasnusai is a euphemism. It's a nice word. It means kapdonusai, the harshness of Zecharya ben Avkilas. He says, always look in Gemara, you'll see anava and kapdonus are always in contrast to each other. La'olam yehi anvasin kibeis hillel, v'loi kapden kashamai. Anvasin and kapden, anava is the humble one, and kapden is the harsh one, the fighter, the one who doesn't tolerate. So Rabbi YY Margolius argues anvasnusi as a euphemism. Where was the humility here? This was the kapdonus. Reb Zecharya ben Avkilas says, I'm not budging. According to Josephus, is it possible it's the same person? And he basically was calling to war against the Romans. That would be a whole different twist, a whole different interpretation. And then you would have to know what anava means. Is anava a euphemism? In other words, it wasn't really anava, it was the exact opposite. Or it means that he was a humble person and therefore they accepted his opinion, they accepted his perspective. So basically he was a very humble person, but deep down he had these convictions with Rome, and because he was so humble, so therefore people had a weakness to him, a sensitivity to him, and they embraced him. Perhaps not. I put out that interpretation. I now come to the Maharitz Chiyus. Reb Tzvi Chiyus. Reb Tzvi Hirsch Chiyus is known as Maharitz Chiyus, is his commentary on Gemara Gittin. Now, as you know, he was a very, very interesting personality. He was born in the year, he passed away in the year Tofresh Tes Zayin. That would be 1855. At the age of 50, he was born 1805. He passed away in 1855. He was a rabbi in Kalisz in Poland. Before that, he was a rabbi in Zalkova in the Ukraine, near Poland. And the Tzvi Hirsch Chiyus was from the Gaoni Hadar. In the Hasidic circle, some persecuted him because of his wide spectrum of knowledge, and he was close with certain people that they felt he shouldn't be close with. He was a tremendous Gaon. Reb Tzvi Chiyus gives the following interpretation to all the Gemaras, which I would say seems to be straightforward, simple, and direct. Let's see. Zogt the Maharatz Chiyus, Lo yadati ma nova hoyse bezeh shelo yinich lekabel karbonoi v'lo lahargoi v'lo hoyoloi la'ashas loimat sitkusoi oy chasidusoi lo yanvasnusoi. I don't know where's the humility in not killing somebody or not offering an animal. Say his tzidkis, his righteousness. He's scared to deviate from halacha. We can't offer an animal. We can't kill somebody. His chasidus, he's very, very pious. Even in these situations, he will not deviate from halacha. What's anvas nusay? Where's the humility? V'ayin Rashi shehirgish b'zeh v'kosav savlo nusay. Rashi knew the problem. Rashi says it's not humility, it's tolerance. Achin be'emes anava l'chud v'savlonas l'chud. But the truth is, he believes anava is precise. This is about humility, not tolerance. You see, he says as follows. Ula. L'fi adina yamuta la'akriv balmum v'karbin b'zeh inyan shoya sakana l'chol Yisrael. Halachically, there's no question you're allowed to sacrifice this animal because it put in danger Klal Yisrael. Pikuach nefesh is doicha all halachas, including not to offer a blemished animal. Nowhere does it say in Chumash you have to rather die and not offer a blemished animal. It's a lav, but this is a sakon. It's not a regular situation. V'hainu mizeh dechazinon d'loi haya nochain be'enei chazal darkish Reb Zecharya ben Avkilas she'amru yoimru balei mumin kreven legabe mizbeach muchach shemin adin hayu mutarim mipnei emes hamalchus. You see that the Chazal criticized him. Rabbi Yochanan criticized him. That means they felt he behaved wrongly. They felt when you're dealing with fear of the regime, of the Roman emperor, you have to violate the halacha and offer the animal. And the MaHarsha brings rayas from Shas. Interesting rayas that this was the case. Yom Samachtes, the Kohanim went out, the Kohen Gadol went out with his begodim, the Kohanim went out of the Beis HaMikdash with Bigdei Kohuna, with shatnez to greet Alexander the Great. How? How are you greeting Alexander the Great wearing wool and linen, wearing shatnez? You're not doing the avoid in the Beis HaMikdash, you go out with the begodim? The answer is, Eimas HaMalchus, it's dangerous. V'chenim hoyu hargim bar Kamsa yoisim gam kinkidim ibnei sheroda v'achar Klal Yisrael v'abala harga chashkem laharga. Whether you offer the animal or you kill him, you're doing the right thing. You offer the animal, you're allowed to because it's an issue of life and death of the Jewish people. Even if you can't offer the animal, you kill him, you're doing the right thing because he's a roidif. He's a murderer. He wants to kill the Jews. V'ula mipnei goydel an v'snusish Reb Zecharya ben Avkilas lo yiriv benavshei ois lasses b'zeh halacha l'maisa. The problem is he was a humble person. And he was really a humble person. And because he was so humble, he didn't have the guts, the courage to be decisive and to take an extreme decision which is not conventional. Killing a person who made a blemish is unconventional. Offering a blemished animal is unconventional. He was afraid that people will say he didn't follow halacha. V'lo yehechshiv atzmoi legodel v'likvoya bedaita liyas oisa halacha l'maisa v'litlis b'roas shah. V'chishiv ki adover nimserak l'gdoili hador v'hu einoi roi l'zeh lasas gdoilis shaloi ketayra v'litlis ki oisa l'man ligdor keretz geder v'lamed b'paretz. He felt too humble to feel that he has the right to make extreme, unconventional decisions and say, this is what we have to do, even though in other situations it would be wrong, as Ha'irah Shah, this is the calling of the hour. Not that he knew that rabbis are not entitled to do this. Eliyahu Hanavi offered sacrifices outside of the Beis HaMikdash, but he felt, Vas b'nech Eliyahu Hanavi, this is for the great people of every generation. I am not that person. Who am I to make a decision? Who am I to take a stand? And therefore the right thing here is passivity. The Chazal chose that word very carefully. What's the word? Anvasnusai. He was a humble person. He was a pious person. He looked at himself in a very lowly fashion. I'm a simpleton. And therefore, even though he knew what might be the right thing, he lacked the conviction, the confidence, the chutzpah, the sense of pride, the sense of dignity to say this is what has to be done, even though in other situations it would be wrong. And what happens then is you're passive, things work out, but when you're a leader in a time of crisis, you can't be passive. You have to be proactive. And as a result of this, catastrophes happen and the Churban Beis HaMikdash occurs. If this is the case, I think the Tosefta Masechta Shabbos works perfectly. You might say, what does this have to do with bones and husks and shells on a table on Shabbos? But the truth is that it conveys the message in a very powerful way. The entire moon is reflected in a single cup of water. The moon is larger than a cup of water, but the whole moon is reflected in a cup of water. The body has 100 trillion cells, and each cell contains the DNA, the genetic program for the entire organism. Each cell has everything. When the Chazal looked at behavior, opinions, we speak many times, there's two ways of interpreting Torah. One is a broken Torah and one is a whole Torah. A broken Torah means, Moshe breaks the luchas, each piece of Torah is self-contained. It's a shard. You don't see the puzzle. When you really learn Torah, each piece is a reflection of the entire mosaic, of the entire tapestry. They're learning about Hilchos Shabbos Muktzah. It has nothing to do with Churban Beis HaMikdash at the surface. It has nothing to do at the surface with Churban Beis HaMikdash, but that's only if you don't see in every cell the full organism. If you don't see in the cup the entire moon. The nature of the human psyche can be seen not only in pivotal moments, but also in small encounters. The great personality characteristics of people, you don't only see when they're standing at forks and they have to make monumental decisions. In little tiny conversations, in small encounters, exchanges, disagreements, debates, behaviors, you could see everything. You just have to be able to know how to see. The biggest things are reflected in the smallest experiences, sometimes more than even big experience, because they're not so noticeable. And therefore, you're not so defensive when it comes to it. What do we see with the argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel? Beis Shammai says, lift up the board, don't touch the bones. Beis Hillel says, it's fine, take the bones and throw them into the garbage. It's not that Zecharya ben Avkilas had a third opinion. Zecharya ben Avkilas did not want to take a position. He didn't want to take a position. He said, I don't want to get involved in sticky situations. I'm humble. I'm going to be Shammai, Beis Hillel, wer bin ich? It's not for me. So what do? I'll figure it out. I'll spit it out from my mouth. It wasn't coming from a place of confidence, of strength. This is the halacha. They're both wrong. That's why the Gemara doesn't say, the Tosef doesn't say, Beis Shammai says this, Beis Hillel says this, Zecharya ben Avkilas says this. No. He was just looking for a way out. How do I get out of this mess? I also want to eat on Shabbos. I'm looking for a way out. And he finds a way out. What do we see here? In life, you have to make decisions. Passivity is sometimes an option, but it's not always an option. And if you're a leader, passivity is lethal. In every generation, there are situations that come up that did not exist in previous generations. And sometimes you'll have leaders, rabbis, sages, chachamim, and they'll say, I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to take a stand. All I could say is, let's leave it status quo. We survived 3,500 years. We'll survive another 3,500 years. This is what Rabbi Yochanan is criticizing. It's not coming because somebody who didn't care, who was apathetic, who was rebellious, who was insensitive. No! It came from somebody who was sensitive, who was pious, who was humble, who was an authentic human being. But sometimes humility, sometimes humility is catastrophic. You know when? If there's somebody about to go to Rome and say, Mordu b'cho Yehudai, if a Beis HaMikdash is going to be burnt, if Jerusalem is going to be destroyed, if the Jewish people are at stake, if somebody is getting away with murder, he's putting in danger thousands and thousands of Jewish children. He's putting in danger thousands and thousands of innocent people. Passivity is a crime. Humility is a crime. Insecurity is a crime. The lack of confidence, the lack of dignity, the lack of making a decision, this is the right thing, it may be disguised by fear of heaven. But Rabbi Yochanan couldn't say it better than Anvasnusoi Hechriva. Remember, sometimes our children, our souls, our holiness gets destroyed not through arrogant people, but through humble people. Because when humility is misplaced, it becomes a form of arrogance. So from all the three situations, a pattern emerges. He's sitting at a party. Somebody was thrown out in public. Somebody was ashamed. Stand up and say something. No. There's another perspective. This guy is a choshev yid. This guy's a Rosh MaHarsha. He threw him out in public. There's another perspective. What do? You do nothing. You do nothing. You start checking your tzitzis. Yeah, you start learning daf yomi. You put the lettuce under the chandelier to start checking the lettuce. You get into a debate about chelas, b'dikas tayloyim. You start speaking about the shir hadus, b'chaim noach, chazonish. There's plenty of good things Jews can do. You look the other way. In 2 minutes it'll be over. Nothing happened. Make sure nobody was with an iPhone with a video, because nobody's allowed to have iPhones over there, so it won't go on the internet. Weitergegangen. Not because he was a bad man, because he was a humble man. It's not so simple what's going on there. He's a choshev yid. He invited me. I know who he invites to the party. He's a yid. He doesn't miss ha-shachis, mit ha-minche, mit ha-mayrev, allein geboren, der geht to mikveh, legt Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin. No. He embarrassed somebody in public. He snuffed the life of somebody. So, he meant it l'shem shamayim. He was humble. He was too humble to take a stand. Story number 1. Story number 2. Bones. Yeah, bones. No bones. I don't take positions. Who am I to take a position? I'm going to find a way out. With bones and shells, we don't care so much. Be machmir, gesund eight. But Rabbi YY says, I want to show you something. He's a leader. And he couldn't take a position in Hilchos Shabbos. He couldn't take a position when it came to Klal Yisrael's destiny. He couldn't say, offer the animal, because you're not supposed to offer the animal. Kill the person, because we usually don't kill a person. He always wanted to play it safe. Safe with whom? Safe with God. Safe with Torah. Safe with mitzvahs. Safe with Shulchan Aruch. He wanted to be sensitive to everybody. He wanted to be morally perfect. He wanted to avoid tough decisions. He was always afraid of the risk of error and moral failure. He was afraid that somebody is going to say, oh, Anaya Gadlador is destroying Judaism. Who are you? But when you live in a space of leadership, and every person lives in a space of leadership with their own constituency, their own family, their own friends, their own disciples, their own community, that behavior becomes extremely reprehensible, because in moments of crisis, hoping that the problem will just go away on its own and we just do nothing, we just let the status quo reign, creates disaster. We know in our generation, in various situations and questions, the natural way is to be humble. It sounds like Jewish. It sounds holy. You can't go wrong with being humble. You can't go wrong with being an anav. Where do you, ha'ish Moshe anav miyait? We learned before, Tayavas Hashem kol gvalev. Get rid of it. Be humble. It sounds great. Do what your father did, what your Zayda did, what your Elter Zayda did. But when Rome is coming to burn Yerushalayim, and millions of souls are on the line, then humility is anything but noble. Anything but divine, anything but just. Now you have to be a Yehuda who gets up and says, Ki avdecha ora ves hanar. You have to bound on the table, v'nafshay kshura b'nafshay, and say, I can't let the status quo happen. They say that there was a fellow who has been hired as a new CEO of a large corporation. The current CEO was stepping down, and he became his successor. And before he took over the job, the previous CEO said, let's have a private meeting. And at the meeting, he gives him over the reins, and he also hands him 3 numbered envelopes, 1, 2, 3. He says, open these envelopes when you face a problem in the company that you can't solve. Good luck, and he leaves. Things were going along pretty smoothly for the first 6 months. After 6 months, the CEO began getting so much criticism, things were going down the drain. He realized there's nothing he can do. He opens the drawer, takes out envelope number 1. He opens it up, there's a piece of paper. It says, blame your predecessor. Great. He calls a press conference and he says, the previous CEO, as you know, was a crook. He was an idiot. He was a moron. He was a shlemazel, a shlemiel, a yutzlichnik. And he blames all the woes of the company on him. And people understand. He says, but we're going to change it. Things pick up again and the company is going smooth again. A year later, again, he's experiencing a dip in sales, some serious malfunction in the products that he's producing. So what does he do? He opens a second envelope. Second envelope reads, now it's time to actually reorganize the company. Calls a press conference and he says, we made a few mistakes, we're restructuring, we're organizing, hiring, firing, shite. Another year passes, it's been going smooth, but now he's facing bankruptcy. He opens up the third envelope and it reads, time to prepare 3 envelopes. So you understand, in life, you can't always prepare 3 envelopes and pass the envelopes. I want to tell you a story I saw. It happened in April 2003. It brought to life for me this story, this idea. A man named Aaron Ralston was climbing in Canyonlands National Park in southeastern Utah. An 800-pound boulder falls on him and pins his right arm. April 2003, Aaron Ralston in southeastern Utah. 800-pound boulder. Tries to get out the right arm with 800 pounds, pinning it to rock. It's really impossible. He lay pinned for nearly 4 days before he runs out of water. There's no water left. He's pinned to the ground. What does he do? Aaron decides he needs to make a decision. He needs to take action. He's trapped. If he remains that way, he faces certain death. There's not much longer he could survive without water, without nutrients, without food. What do you do? What do you do? You remain there, you die. You leave, you can't leave. So Aaron Ralston chose an option that made him, of course, an international sensation. If he would have been passive, if he would have just let things be, he would have died. But what is he supposed to do? No choice seems good, but you have to make a decision. And a decision he makes. But the problem is that every decision you make is problematic, but no decision is worse than everything. He pulled out his trustworthy pocket knife. He amputated his own arm from below the elbow. He wrapped a bandage around it, around the part of his arm that was left intact, and he climbed down to the floor of the canyon. He then hiked downstream, where he was spotted by Utah Police Safety, a Utah Police Safety helicopter. He was rushed to the hospital. Aaron survived. He wrote a detailed account of his experience. The book is entitled Between a Rock and a Hard Place. I guess pun intended. I think this tells us something very profound. You have to learn how to make decisions in life and go with them. The problem is either decision is imperfect. If you offer a blemished animal, you're doing the wrong thing. If you're killing a person, you're doing the wrong thing. The problem is the alternative, not making a decision, is far more imperfect. It's called Churban Yerushalayim, Churban Beis HaMikdash. In fact, I once saw a response by Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Igris Moshe, I think Yeridea Kuf Aleph. Reb Moshe was matir and aguna. The whole story, a woman couldn't remarry. She wanted to remarry. She was stuck in an old marriage. It was a whole question, yes, no. Reb Moshe was matir. A rabbi wrote him a very sharp letter. How do you do such a type of thing? Why don't you leave the status quo? Let the status quo be. And he responded with this Gemara. On Vasnusish Zecharya ben Avkilas Echrives Beisenu, and the interpretation of the MaHarsha. Wasn't tolerance. It was humility. It was a person like you saying, who are we to make decisions? And he says, listen, if a decision was made already and it was embraced by the poskim, I don't argue. I can't argue with it. If I know there's a precedent for it, I'm not going to try to come up with a new decision. But in a situation where somebody's life is on the line, and if I don't make a decision, this person's life is going to be destroyed in one way or another, woe unto me if I believe that the Torah is locked up and has to remain rigid, and there's no room for creativity, for ingenuity, for development, according to the klalim, according, of course, to the principles of halacha. A beautiful, practical way in which he applied this to contemporary halacha. And now we come to the last interpretation. You'll see immediately a very different perspective. This is from the MaHarsha Nayim. It's on your first page, the second to the last source. The MaHarsha Nayim was written by Reb Menachem Nachum of Chernobyl. Reb Menachem Nachum Twersky. Reb Nachum Chernobyler, who was a student of the Baal Shem Tov and a student of the Maggid of Mezrich, passed away Yud Aleph Cheshvan Tovkuf Nun Ches, 1797, the same year like the Vilna Gaon, whom we spoke about and mentioned earlier, but came, of course, from a very different world, from the world of the Baal Shem Tov, the world of Chassidus. Says the MaHarsha Nayim, Avart. After everything said and done, you'll agree with me, there's something off. Let's say you're Zecharya ben Avkilas. You're a sage, you're a rabbi. A guy went to Rome, told the emperor that the Jews want to fight you. And this is not a question of how much Donald Trump loves Jews. When his daughter converted to Judaism, his son-in-law celebrates Shabbos. So in America, Jews can argue about these things. This is Rome 2,000 years ago. And when the Roman emperor hears the Jews rebelled, and he's bringing a carbon to prove that they rebelled or didn't rebel, ultimately, how could anybody say, don't offer the carbon? You're humble, you don't want to take a position, you're humble, you tolerate, Chilul Hashem, good, all's good and fine. It's mamish pikuach nefesh. It doesn't seem to be such a complicated situation. It's real pikuach nefesh. Millions of Jews' life are at stake. Just say, offer the animal. You don't want to kill him, don't kill him. Bring the carbon. Tell the Roman emperor we offer the carbon. This is missing at the end of the day. The MaHarsha Nayim gives a new perspective. And of course, characteristically, he gets in more to a spiritual dimension of the story. Efshar loymar. The bevade bin diskablu dvarav shel Zecharya ben Avkilas beinei hachachamim va'asu kedvarav bevade haya gadol b'doirei ki ilula zois lo hayu mashgichin b'dvarav haya oisin kasher haya b'daitem lasas la'akriv mishum shalom malchus. He begins just like the Vilna Gaon. If they listened to him, it means he was the greatest. If not, they would have said to Zecharya, you're a good man, but please, this doesn't make sense. We need peace with Rome. The fact that they listened to him and they were ready to surrender their own position means they looked at the Zecharya as Gadol B'Doire, as the greatest of his generation. To the point that they said, he is the man to listen to. Ekveis Besser. So this is which makes the question bigger. How could somebody say this? And how can everybody disagree? How can everybody agree? The answer is they had to agree because it was him. When you have a person of that stature saying this, everybody says, you know what? Loisana al Rav, Loisana al Riv, Loisana al Rav. As we learned before, Sanhedrin Lamed Vav Amud Aleph. There's no choice. We have to listen to him. But how does he say such a thing? V'gam tzichem anu loymar, k'deb Zecharya ra beruach hakodesh shehigia ha'eis shebeis hamikdash yicharev. V'lachein lo yratzu sheyizbatel dvar Torah sheyomnu balei mumin kreivin v'chuli. Ki ein ze pu'ula levatel hagzeira shenigzera sheyachriv beis hamikdash k'mo sheyada zois beruach hakodesh. Dem loy kein Heich loy chashlo zed Zecharya gam ken shekriv mishum shloi malchus ha'en lecha davar shayim b'pnei pikuach nefesh v'kol sheken shekol nefashis yitzlo yiyu b'sakana aydei shelo yakrivu ach bevade mitam amor aydei shera shekvar nigzed gzeder shebevade yecharev v'al kein loy ratzu sheyevutel davar echad me'atayra. The Halachic Nayim says Zecharya ben Avkilas had spiritual insight, divine inspiration. And he saw that the time of exile has arrived. The Beis HaMikdash is going to be destroyed. Jewish history is changing. And there's nothing we can do to change that. Making sure that this animal goes on the altar, wird helfen wie teute Bankes. Killing this guy, you think you're saving something. It's the time of the Churban. It's not going to happen this way, it's going to happen that way. This is just where it's going. This is where history is going. This detail, that detail won't alter it. So Rabbi Zecharya ben Avkilas says, at least, let's hold on to the Torah. What's going to make us survive is the Torah. Let's not change halacha. Ein lanu shir ela Torah azois. Let's not change halacha. Let a Jew know that you don't offer a balmum to the mizbeach. It's a halacha. Don't touch halacha. At least let's hold on to that. If I could save the Beis HaMikdash, I would change halacha. Pikuach nefesh is doicha kol ha'Torah kula. You can deviate almost every mitzvah from every mitzvah to save a Jewish life. Never mind all of Klal Yisrael. Rabbi Zecharya doesn't know this. Rabbi Zecharya doesn't know you could be makriv, a blemished animal, to save Klal Yisrael. Of course he does, but he says it's not going to save anybody. How can I violate Shabbos? How can I eat treif to save a life? I'm not saving. The guy is dead. You're not allowed to be Mechalel Shabbos, sorry. To save, you could be Mechalel Shabbos. To save a life, not to make yourself feel good. There's nothing we can do. He saw things that other people didn't see. He saw it's a time, it's a moment. He was right, a little time. So therefore, he says, at least, let's hold on to Torah. Let's not touch Torah. This is the ultimate weapon of the Jewish people, the ultimate ammunition of the Jewish people. This is how they will survive and come back one day with Torah. This will hold them. This will connect them to eternity. Don't touch it. Even if he offers the animal, he changes, he's mevatel the din, and he says it's fine because pikuach nefesh, it's the time of the churban, it's going to happen anyway, so why should I change halach? This is how the MaHarsha Nayim justifies his position. He saw what others didn't see. V'im kein tzarich lahavin, lama lo yamar lehem, kach befeidish, lefi daitoi shaloi toilot shemai from levatel agzeira hayalei lahidion shaloi yevatlu lechalapachas divrei Torah bechinam bein poula. Why didn't he tell this to them? Explain to them your position. Say, listen, Rabbi YY, Rabbi YY, I would love to offer the sacrifice and make peace with Rome and make sure that we're safe. And pikuach nefesh overrides halacha, and therefore I can offer it. But let me tell you, we're not going to accomplish anything. This is going to be ineffective. We're just going to be obliterating words of Torah in vain. It's going to be futile. Tell it to them. Let them appreciate where you're coming from. Ela bevadai, machmas midas an nove shahaya boilerotza lahadion shuyedei azais baruch hakodesh. They would turn to him and say, how do you know? How do you know? Rabbi Zecharya ben Avkilas was not ready to get up and say, I have some prophetic powers. I have some powers of Ruach HaKodesh, of holy divine inspiration. He was humble. That's what it means that his humility destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. Wait 1 second. Why? You're saying that it wasn't his humility, it would have been destroyed anyway. No. Here comes the MaHarsha Nayim's word. If not for his humility, he would have told us what he sees. He would have said, I see that the Beis HaMikdash is going to be destroyed, and that's why I tell you, don't let this man bring the carbon, because it won't be effective. The Gzeira was already. He would have said it. And you know what would have happened? And the Chachamim would have known there's no such a thing. Hope is lost. They would have done everything they can to alter the decree in terms of prayer, in terms of tshuva. But because of his humility, he didn't want to say that he sees this with divine inspiration. So he didn't tell anybody what he was thinking. So what did he say? You can't offer the animal because people are going to think that if you offer an animal that's a balmum, they're going to think you're allowed to offer a balmum. And you can't kill him because people are going to think if you kill somebody who made a blemish, you're allowed to kill somebody who made a blemish. It warrants a death penalty. That's what he said. Really what he was thinking was, this is the halacha. Why should you change it? There's going to be a Churban Beis HaMikdash. He was just giving the external explanation, but not the internal explanation. What was he thinking? He was thinking sefafalin. He was humble to say what he saw, and he thought there's nothing to do, so that's why should we change halacha? What was the tragedy here? The tragedy here, the MaHarsha says, there's no such a thing that something can't be changed. There's no such a thing that this is how it is, and it can't be altered. The Beis HaMikdash is being destroyed, and therefore nothing can happen. No! Don't think like that. They could have found ways. They could have created revolutions in heaven. They could have altered reality. A Jew can change reality. And therefore we say it's his humility that echriva es beisenu. The humility in thinking of himself that he can't speak about himself, that he saw heaven, which also has to do with a different type of humility that what? We can't change reality. And therefore, echriva es beisenu. Had he would have said the Beis HaMikdash is going to be destroyed, forget about it. They would have said, no, the Beis HaMikdash won't be destroyed. We will fight it. We will alter the decree. And then, of course, they might have also offered the animal in order to be derech hateva, not to create a new fight with Rome. So this is similar to what Rabbi YY Jacobson writes in Kedushas Levi Parshas Noach. It says that Noach came into the ark because of the flood. So Rashi brings from the Medrash, Af Noach Miktane Amona Hoya. Noach too had little emunah, he had little faith. He didn't go into the Teva until the Mabul was coming down. Ask the commentators, Noach had little faith. He built an ark for 120 years. The world mocked him, and he built an ark for 120 years. That's called little faith. Hashem speaks to him directly. It's called little. He didn't even have to have emunah. Hashem spoke to Noach. He didn't even need faith. He spoke to Hashem. Rabbi YY Bar says, Af Noach Miktane Amonim Hoya means not that he had little faith in God. Miktane Amonim Hoya means Noach had little faith in himself. He had little emunah in himself. Hashem said there's going to be a Mabul. He said, okay, what's next? Build an ark. Okay, what's next? Go into the ark. Okay. He said, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu the same thing. I'm going to destroy the Jewish people. Moshe said, not on my body, not on my dead body. Im tisar chatasam v'im ayin mecheni no mesifru chasher kasofta. If you don't forgive them, erase me from the Sefer Torah. Mecheni is the letters Mei Noach, the waters of Noach, because Moshe was a nitzutz, a spark of Noach, and he rectified Noach's mistake. Noach underestimated the power of a human being to alter reality, the power of tefillah, the power of davening, to shake up the heavens. Noach underestimated his own koyach of tzaddik goyzer v'kadosh baruch hu mekayim, kadosh baruch hu goyzer v'tzaddik mevatel, as the Gemara says. It's not he didn't believe in Hashem, he didn't believe in himself. He didn't believe that he had the power to alter things. This is the way it has to be, this is how it was, this is how it's going to be forever. That's K'tanei Amona. And was nusser Reb Zecharya ben Avkilas says the MaHarsha. He wouldn't say that he saw things in Ruach HaKodesh. So therefore they didn't know what he was thinking. They didn't know what he was thinking. They listened to him. But this is the Echrives Bat Mikmagshena. Not because the man went back to Rome, but because they didn't know to confront the reality and try to change it. Have a wonderful week.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.